Well, good afternoon. And today we are going to have a career webinar that is titled From Campus to CEO. And it will provide insights on web design and product design from Mr. Akanno. The organizers of the event are Enterprise Club and Future Lab. Who will be hosting will be myself, Brenda Kiwelu, and my fellow host, Tammy Draman.
Hello,
So,
guys.
yeah, okay. So, Mr. Akanno is an entrepreneur with over 10 years of experience and has a proven track record of creating digital experiences that are beautiful and user friendly. He's an expert in customer centric product design and management and has been certified by Harvard University in innovation and strategy. He also holds a master's degree in innovation and entrepreneurship from the University of California and has been recognized by Forbes Africa as one of their 30 under 30 in technology. Currently, Mr. Ivan Sakano is a founder of a software development company called VZY, and VZY basically makes it easy to create beautiful websites on your phone. Yeah, and it doesn't require any kind of coding or design skill, and it is all under the assistance of AI. Mr. Ivan Sakano has also been a founder of previous companies, one of them being Disha, which was acquired by Flutterwave. That was his first exit as a founder. And this was a six-figure acquisition. He was also interviewed by Y Combinator, and he had managed employees and engaged customers to gain traction. He basically designed Disha pages, and Disha was a mobile landing page builder. His second company is called Credital, and he was the CEO and founder. He bootstrapped the agency from $1,600 personal savings to over $700,000 in revenue. He managed 15 plus employees and engaged with 200 plus clients across industries. He pitched web and mobile prototypes to more than 50 organizations with 90% success rate. He designed the digital experience for 70% of Africa's leading banks. I would like to present to you Mr. Evans Akanno.
Guys, how are you doing today? My name is Evans, and I'm really glad to be here with you guys to discuss like ideas on how to move from campus to CEO. And ready to share every insight I have over the past, say, 10 years of doing this. And I would like this to be a very engaging session where you can feel free to send any question in, and let's try to understand each other and see how you can help you grow. Thank you.
Oh, such an honor to have you here, Mr. Evans Akanno at APU, and also with Future Lab. APU is in Asia Pacific University of Innovation Technology. Well, I guess one of the first things, you have quite an impressive background. So one of the first things that students would be really interested in asking is, how did you get started with design, right? How did you get started with design and entrepreneurship? Was it something that you always knew since high school you were going to be an entrepreneur, or was it something that you did while you were in university?
So interestingly, before university, before my undergrad, and this was 2005, because I started my undergrad in 2005, I wanted to be a doctor. I was so keen on being a doctor, and I realized that maybe it wasn't my own passion, but a transferred passion from my parents to me, which is what most of us see as young people, right? Um, so at that time I was going to study medicine, but somehow plans didn't fall into place to study medicine, and then I studied industrial chemistry. But I always knew that I had a passion for creativity, and not from the arts perspective, but from the science perspective. And that passion kind of morphed into what was graphic design back in the day. And I enjoyed graphic design. I would love to like use simple software like Photoshop or Corel Draw to just design very simple things, even it's pictures or graphic art. And after graduating from university, I kind of realized that there was this quote I heard, I think it's from Steve Jobs. It was make your passion, love what you do. If you do what you love, then you love what you do, something like that. And in those lines, I kind of just felt like maybe I should build a career around graphic design. But I realized that a career in graphic design is not entirely what it should be. It should morph into you having creative services for companies. And so I started with freelancing, which my skills in freelancing or even skills in graphic design kind of got better by me studying the works of other designers, which is one of the pointers here. Nobody's born an expert. We are all beginners. We are all learning, right? So I spent time online, researching the works of other designers, researching brands and how they design creatives. And by studying these different designs, I kind of realized, oh, here's a positioning for design. Here's how balance works. Here's how to use color. And by practicing, I got really better at it. And once I realized I was good enough, I started to build a structure around a business on creativity.
Oh, okay. I like how you said you liked creativity, but on the science side, I think most people do not really realize that design is kind of like a science. You've ever touched on how you felt about designers generally? So I'd like to hear how you describe, because people feel like, oh, design is just like aesthetics, color. Could you please touch on?
I know
Um,
that for most people, they think that design is mostly just what you see. But when you start to reverse engineer the process and you see that there are some brands that you fall in love with just because of how things look. For example, Apple as a brand, people love Apple products just because of the way it looks, right? the way the iPhones are shaped, the way the ads look. Back then I would look at magazines and I looked at how, photography, logo placements, design of a logo can add to the overall value of a brand. And because of that, I kind of just felt like, even if I was to do design, I don't want to be that person who's designing people's faces anymore or like designing people's pictures. I want to use my design skills to drive impact in the industry. And the best way to do that was to find local clients around me and even family and friends who needed graphic design services in form of a logo or a banner design or a Facebook ad. And from there, I kind of started to realize that this can be a potential career path. This can be a potential business that can be structured around creativity.
Oh, okay. That's great. So, well, I see that you had, as you said, you had studied industrial chemistry,
Yeah.
and we all know how I think Asians and Africans can relate because parents are very kind of like they look down upon creativity, right? They look down upon the arts, and then
Sure.
they prioritize the STEM subjects. So, how did this journey of yours saying, you know what, I did take a degree in chemistry. You did also do an internship, right? But
Yes.
then you decided to go. How did you deal with the self-doubt, and how did you get your everyone around you to believe in you and get on board with the idea?
It was tough. Starting out was really hard. I find that my parents really wanted me to have that kind of professional type of engagement where I have a full-time role in a energy type company, and I mean that was also a very good thing, right? But I have to be very honest, in Nigeria where I'm from, the unemployment rate is really high, so trying I applied for jobs for give or take about 6 months and I realized, I can't tell myself that I've been applying for a job. That's not what I've been doing for the past 6 months. I have to do something in the middle before I get that great job, right? And that's where I started to lean on my creative side. And, it didn't take me long for me to start to craft professionalism around that creative work I did. And I think parents watch when they see their children do these things, right? From me just designing creatives to me saying, I want to get a desk for me to work with, and this is my workspace. Oh, mom, I have a meeting, I have a phone call meeting. When they start to see those kind of tiny changes around your behavior, they start seeing that this person is onto something, this person is crafting something for themselves within a field. And I also think that when they start to see revenue coming in, and then you start making major moves to say things like, "Oh, I want to buy a car," and they're like, "You want to buy a car?" You're like, "Yeah, I've earned enough money from my business to buy a car." They kind of start to believe that he has there to craft something really good with this creativity. So I feel like to get parents to get their buy-in, sometimes we need to be patient with them because they want the best for us. Most of the time when you what they're really saying is not just you get a full-time job in a structured environment. What they're truly saying is they want you to have job security, right? And so when you understand that job security is what they intend to say, but it's maxed as you getting a job in a structured environment, then you should try to build that job security into your creativity just so that they know that you're thinking about what they're thinking of. And once you get that alignment, you're good to go.
Okay, that's great. Okay, you already, I think right now in this age, we have universities accepting degrees where you can study, industrial design, graphic design, UI, UX, right? Even here. But then during your time, you didn't have that. So I'd like to know, how did you leverage the skills you learned from your industrial degree to getting into the creative field and actually being a design leader? How did you know how to lead a team? What transferable skills did you get from your degree?
I don't think there were any skills I got from my degree that I applied into design apart from research. So I find that I always love to research, right? Doing industrial chemistry got me reading lots of different books, right? And I would say there's no part of chemistry in design, right? It's hard to find a strong correlation between those two fields. But one thing I knew for sure is the importance of research, because when you do deep research, you can have multiple different opinions and then craft a new unique opinion on a subject matter. So I applied that into my design. If I was to design a website years, after my university, I would research about 10, 20 brands in that field of business, and I would understand how they do what they do for their brand to be a top brand in that industry. And then I apply all the learnings from those brands into designing for the new brand I'm working with. And I think that's the only thing. Science and research is a huge component of science. That's one thing I would say I transferred from my degree to my work in creative. The rest of it really was just getting better at your skills, looking at other projects, learning on the job. That's about it.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I see that you were working for Jumia as a brand marketing specialist, and then later on you went as a creative strategist. I wanna kind of like know, how did you get from the point where um you said, okay, you already shared that you had started with some relatives, some people who were close, you designed something for them. Um, what resources did you use? Right now we have Coursera, we have a lot of places where you can learn online, but I bet back in your days it was a bit different. So I'd like to know what resources you used, and then after that, how did you go about jumping right from the the internship you just did to the company that you Jumia, which is a really good company, by the way. How'd you go about that? Because I think students are scared of resume gap, right? People don't really know how to pivot from one career to another or from one industry to another. So I'd really like to know, because I feel like yeah, you really did a big but good jump.
So the first thing I think, Jumia was the first structured environment where I worked, the first startup where I worked. Right before Jumia, I think I got into Jumia in 2012. And before then, I had my freelance business, right? I was freelancing for lots of companies in Nigeria, or let's say a few companies, because they were mostly friends and extension of friends to, their friends. And, one of them had referred me to a job, which I had no idea it was a full-time job. I thought the company called Jumia had wanted a design person to do some design project for them. So when I attended the meeting, I was told it wasn't a meeting, but an interview. And so it's kind of structured my mind. Was I ready for a full-time role? Because at the time I was already earning, I had structured my business to earn as much as what someone would earn on a full-time role, and they told me they wanted me full-time. And I considered the offer. The offer was good. And I took it on. And so I worked with Jumia for about 9 months. And then I got an offer from the next company, Konga, which is also the same kind of e-commerce field. And I moved on to the next company because they had promised me better work schedules and all of that. And it was good for me to move. I think that what was instrumental in getting a full-time role was the fact that I had shown the quality of work that I had done for different businesses, regardless of their size. And those things were like very good portfolio to show to get a full-time role. And even at that time, it was difficult to find resources. There were barely anything like Coursera or Udemy to learn design. Mostly we learnt by reverse engineering people's designs. So, say for example, you're looking at this app called StreamYard, and we're going to talk about digital products, right? By looking at this app, you can tell that, oh, there's a chat bubble on the right, there is a logo on the left, there's a title of the program at the top. This is how this is structured. You should have a full screen effect for the people who are moderating. By looking at this, if you are told to design another application for live streaming, you can be able to leverage StreamYard and maybe three other products and say, this is what I think is lacking on these products, and here's what I can apply to a new product. So that research methodology kind of helps a lot with you thinking about how to even get inspiration for design?
Okay, that's great. So I'm gonna touch on the resume gap. I think many people, especially when they want to become students, when they want to become entrepreneurs, we're really scared of, let's say, stopping working in your field, then doing something else. Let's say, at least we have freelancing, but still, in some countries, it's not. Employers aren't really looking, they don't want to hear that. So students are not really kind of like open to taking a break or exploring the entrepreneurship field, since it's such a risk.
Mhm.
How would you advise students to go about it? Let's say, to make it more clear, example, you start a company, let's say it doesn't work out in America, employees look at that and say, oh, at least you started a company, you probably learned something, they're gonna kind of like still hire you. But
Yeah,
here, people will kind of like now have to work for startups, maybe, if you do take that
I see.
risk.
So when it comes to resume gaps, I think there are ways you can frame that gap and it puts you in a better position. Firstly, you to find companies that are aligned with the things you like, right? Or with the kind of role you're trying to take on. It's important for people who, say, for example, you mentioned something profound where you said you could work at a startup, right? Startups are the kind of companies that are open to different kinds of background changes that you must have had or different gaps. You can also frame it that you took a year off to go study in a new field. That's where you can say the 1 year gap or the 2 years gap you have in your resume was you taking a step back to go research, to go learn more, and you don't even need to show that you went for a new degree, say a master's degree or something. You can actually just show that you learned all of this in a gap year, and now you're ready to apply all that wisdom, all that knowledge you've gained into a new role. I feel like depending on how you position yourself, the gap in your resume shouldn't really be a problem if you have gained experience even within that gap. And for some use cases here, you can be asked to explain what you were doing in that time, and you frame it as you were not just an entrepreneur, but you were working in your own company, and that works. I've seen times where people have asked me, okay, where was the last time you had a full time role at a company? And I say, oh, the last full time role I had was about 10 years ago. However, here are all the companies I've worked for over the past 10 years. You can reach out to them, you can ask for references from them. They've been my employers over the past 10 years. So you see, there's a way you can frame the conversation and it still puts you in an advantage that beyond the regular applicant for that role, you're someone who has even more vast experience compared to the person who has just worked at a company. You've worked at, say, 5, 6, 7 companies over the past 2 years due to you being an entrepreneur. So it's all about how you frame the question.
Mm.
All right. Thank you for that session. So I would actually like to know more about your, walk of the design life where you were designing products, user interfaces, and also could you please walk us through your flow for creating UI prototypes, or how do you get started with that process and stuff?
Great. The first thing I would say is simple, right? I find that one thing I notice is a lot of people tell designers that it's so tough for you to start out. I try not to make it look that hard. I try to make it look as simple as it is so we can encourage more people to actually go and do it. You know, to design any app is actually simple. Once you understand the foundations of design, things like spacing, balance, how to use color, and even now is far more easier than before. There are templates for you to wireframe and all of that. For me, my first process is actually wireframing, right? And it's wireframe as simple as pen and paper, right? There are so many apps out there in the world, especially for persons who want to design for the web or design for apps. if you're to make the next social media network, you have a plethora of options, right? From TikTok to Facebook to Instagram and Twitter that you can leverage and say, here is what I'm trying to do. Here is what I can sketch, how it should look like, how I imagine it to look like. But even before you start to sketch your wireframes, the first thing is to get the requirements, right? What should this app do, right? Or what should this product be about? It's a website. What's the website about, right? Once you get all that requirements, those requirements now frame what you're going to sketch, which will form like a blueprint for that project, right? So say, for example, you're designing a social media network, and the brief you're getting or the brief you created for yourself is that this social network is big on videos. We want to make a social media network where, people share lots of videos. And for those videos being shared, we want the algorithm to promote videos from different locations. We want people to be able to remix those videos to make new videos. It's heavily video centered. I believe by now you already know that what I'm trying to describe is almost like a TikTok, right? You can tell yourself that if it's a video platform and people reach it on their phone, automatically you're designing for a mobile first audience, right? All your mobile wireframes you're sketching will pretty much be vertical screens, like you're designing something that would fit a vertical screen. And you're asking yourself, oh, if it's a vertical screen, all the videos on here would all be vertical format, right? So you can now be able to sketch and say, oh, I just want a large centered button for them to start the video. I want reactions to show on the bottom right. So when people click love, it can show love on the video. I want comments to be on the left. Once you can visualize all of those things, put it on a paper, like simple wireframing, right? You don't need to get any app or any tool for that. Pretty much just sketch what should look like. Once you've gotten the flow, saying the first thing they see is login, sign up, right? Once they log in, they get to see a timeline. On that timeline, they see other people they are following, all videos they've done. When they click on one video, it shows this next screen. When they want to create a video, this is a sequence. Once you have all of that mapped together and you have an approval, you've tested that with your audience, right? Because testing is one very important part of the process. I advise designers not to design from beginning to the end before talking to their customers. Try to keep customers engaged. And it can even be just 50 people, 20 people you're talking to, just so you can get their input on how they think this thing should be, right? Show them your prototype, have them weigh in what is easy to use, what's complicated about this, right? So you can design something that is super simple for them. Most times you are not your own end user. People would use this application, so try to get their input very early on. And once you have that and you have approvals on that, then you can start to prototype on a Figma. I think Figma is the best app today for prototyping, right? You start to design those screens on Figma. And as much as possible, there are so many resources online. There are free templates. You can leverage any of those UI kits to build out the version 1 of your app.
Thank you for that very detailed answer. I actually agree on this thing that where you would have to be constantly be in touch with your consumers and get the idea from them, because at the end of the day, you're not the one who's speaking for the app, but the customers, the end users itself. So since you just gave us a walkthrough of your own journey, I was wondering that if there are any most commonly faced challenges during this entire journey that you have.
Entrepreneurship is a load of challenges. Like every new day, it's a new challenge. But when you look back, say 5 years or 10 years, you'll see how much wisdom you've gotten from just being an entrepreneur. And I think that because of the learnings, I would encourage more people to become entrepreneurs, right? Because the learnings you'll get would help you for a lifetime. More people will reach out to you and ask you for your knowledge on different things. A very good entrepreneur would have a bit of knowledge about human resources, knowledge about marketing, knowledge about product development, knowledge about building a business, finance, lots of different areas. And you're getting trained across all these areas all at once. So on Monday, you may have a challenge about finance and you learn one thing about finance. Tomorrow is a legal challenge and you learn about legal. And Wednesday is a marketing challenge. Some days there's even challenges in finance and marketing on the same time. And you realize by juggling all these balls, you become very, very good at what you do, because it's only over time you get the wisdom from every challenge. Now, the major challenges I've seen over the past few years are things like, and these are the common challenges, right? Looking to build a business, funding is a real challenge, right? When I started out in Nigeria building my very first company, I knew how hard it was to get finance, but I realized, oh, if I should offer services, I can bootstrap this business, right? And all I need to do is get, to run a lean operation. So I wasn't ever big on having like a large team of 200 people when there's no financing for that. I always thought about how can I run this enterprise in a very small way and have it in a very non-bureaucratic environment where we can actually get things done in far less time. I thought about it from that angle, and it helped me to run a lean operation that was much more sustainable or operationally efficient. Running a smaller business made me understand the different aspects of the business that required funding, and knowing how to fund the business from customer revenue. So when people paid, it helped us to grow. It helped us to save as a company, helped us to invest money in different ideas that we are experiencing or experimenting with. What else? Other challenges are like people challenges, where it's not so easy managing people. It's kind of easy managing yourself when you start out as, say, a freelancer, but when you start to build a business, you start to manage people. You start to watch the way you speak to them. You watch the way you encourage them. You watch how you admonish them when they make a mistake. It's easy for you to forgive yourself if you make a mistake in your business. But how would you feel if someone makes a mistake and that mistake costs you $10,000? Are you going to fire them on the spot? Are you going to ask them to go recover the money? Are you going to tell them it's all right? Those kind of lessons are also things you get to learn in entrepreneurship. There's also the part of generally making money in the company. A lot of people are good at creating value, but their businesses are not great at capturing value. Capturing value is as important as creating value. If you know how to create, say, designs, for example, I expect there are more designers on this call. Imagine you know how to make really beautiful designs, but you don't know how to price yourself in the market. That's also a challenge. You need to also study what's the best way I can price myself that I'm earning good money for what I'm doing. So it's important that we also know how to price ourselves and all of these things. The beautiful thing is that there's wealth of knowledge on YouTube, on Twitter, on pretty much any platform. Just go out there and search for these things. There are people who are creating content on how to do any of these things. So for every challenge, there is wisdom you will learn from it, and there's a solution out there.
All right, thank you for the knowledgeable insight. So let's talk about a little bit about values right now. So let's say if there were to be a startup company, right? And they start, and as the word startup goes, they're probably trying to cut costs here and there, and then they kind of actually compromise on the brand identity design. So could you talk about like how would a brand identity itself would impact a product design? Like let's say if they were to have an application of their own, but they don't have a brand identity design and they don't really care about that. They just want the app to be rolled out. So how would it impact them if they don't have it?
I think branding is super important, and branding is not restricted to logo design. Branding is how people see and feel your product. Branding is what they say when you are not even present about your product. We talked about Apple today and what the Apple brand stands for. We didn't even discuss if the logo is shaped like an apple or is a chopped apple. Those things don't matter. They are for identity purposes. So branding is as important as your name, for example. So I could say your name is Tammy. That's how I can identify you. However, the fact that Tammy is an important person in society or he's an intelligent person, those are the things that are his brand, right? Branding is super important, especially identities when you're creating an app. Because if you look at today, you open a typical person's phone, they have, say, about 50 apps by default. And so it's important that your app icon, for example, stands out while they are swiping through the rest. It's important that it's memorable, that when they see your branding, they can be able to tell this is this brand. In in an industry where most brands are blue in color, what's the way you want to, what color do you want your brand to have so that people can be able to identify this and say, this shade of blue is Facebook, this shade of blue is Twitter, but they are both blue. Those things are important. And I think when you are engaged with a designer to design a product and you see that the branding of the company is weak, I think it's a good opportunity to upsell yourself. I'm big on how we frame what we call problems, right? Sometimes those problems are actually opportunities if we just look at it from a different angle, right? When you mentioned Jumia, it's interesting to note that at the time I worked at Jumia, the company wasn't even called Jumia. It was called Kasua, and while we were working in the company, they were like, oh, we need to rebrand. And I actually designed the logo of that Jumia brand, while working there at the company. So it's just a simple task. Oh, can two of you designers suggest logos? And then I suggested a logo and I perfected that logo and it became their logo till date. So you find that a lot of challenges are actually opportunities. If you're tasked to produce a product design and you see there's branding and identity lacking, maybe it's time for you to upsell yourself and say, here is how a logo should look like for this brand. It should be simple, memorable, easy to identify.
Yep, I completely agree on that. So like when it comes to like both, doing a brand identity design or even creating UI UX prototypes for a company, we have probably heard of the word called user personas. Do you think user personas are actually important or vital for when it comes to designing any brand identity design or even product design?
Yes, absolutely necessary. User personas are important because you see, if you share with me on that ideology of building for the end user in mind, you need to understand who is that end user, right? And these things can be applied beyond even designing a product. If you're building anything, if you're starting a podcast, right, you need to ask yourself, if I'm doing a podcast on creativity, who are the people who will be interested in this podcast? They are designers. How old are they? They are between the ages of, say, 15 to like 35. And they spend more time on what's platform. They spend time on Instagram, on Twitter, but mostly Instagram and I don't know, maybe TikTok, right? And all of these things, what you're building there is a mind map of the customer profile. The importance of that is that by knowing that, it shapes not just the product design, but how the product is marketed, how the product is distributed, how you do customer acquisition on that product. It shapes the whole business model, knowing who your customer is. So customer profiles or personas or user profiles or user personas are not just for the design team. They are things that are important for the whole organization.
Yep. All right. So, like, since we're talking about user personas and research in general, like, are there any like specific research methods you personally use to gain consumer insight before designing a product? Because I know that there are like a lot of business requirements that come in from the end users as well, and we have to be always thinking with that when it comes to designing our UI UX prototypes. So, are there any research methods in particular that you really like to use or you'd like to share?
I think there's one from NN Group. They are very big on UX. Let me confirm that URL. Yes, NN Group, the Nielsen Norman Group, right? They have a few frameworks that you can try. One thing I always try to advise people is to start simple, right? Sometimes we try to complicate the whole process. Try to be as simple as possible, right? When building a new product, you can't undermine the fact that there's really no idea that's entirely new. Every idea you see out there in the world as at now is a variation of an existing idea. Before we had Facebook, we had MySpace back in the day. Around the time we had MySpace, we had High Five, right? While Facebook was still trending, Instagram was born. Instagram was trending, TikTok was born, right? So there's always an evolution and there's always an existing idea before that new idea, right? Nothing is entirely new. And there is so much you can gain from just studying the customers and the current application they spend time in, right? As a designer, there's so much you can gain from just studying those two things. By studying them, I think you would get enough insights for you to even launch, right? Now, post-launch, there's lots of learning to do post-launch. You can install tools like Hotjar or any other data tracking tool that can tell you what your users are clicking on within your application, right? It can help you show they're clicking on this area, they're clicking on this area. Now, based on those things you're getting, which is data insights within your application, then you can refine the application. But don't spend so long trying to research, wildly about application or looking for a framework that works. I think what's important is that you can study existing products, you can be able to talk to customers while you're building new ones, you can get them engaged in your wireframes, and then you can build a version 1 and roll out, and then learn after you've rolled out. One of the challenges with most products today is that they put research at the beginning of the process. UX research should be part of the whole life cycle. Even after you've launched, keep researching.
So case studies are technically one important aspect when it comes to any of these things, basically. Okay, so as an expert in this field for such a long time, would you like to share any kind of tips to any beginners or UI, UX designers out there to keep an eye on?
What I would say first is try to keep things as simple as possible. That's one of the, it may seem as very basic, but it is super, super important. When you keep designs to be very simple, it helps the whole process. It helps if you're trying to pivot that business, if you're trying to add new features to that app. Keeping design simple helps. It gives room for adding more stuff, right? If you're creating an app and that app is already clunky with so many features from the get-go, it may be difficult for you to add new ideas in there. But when you have more space, you see how, for example, Twitter didn't have Reels about 3 years ago, right? Twitter had pictures and videos. However, because they've designed the app in a very simple format, it was easy for them to add a new feature called Reels, right? And be able to say they are putting this Reels format in a full vertical format since TikTok launched. So you see how, having space for new ideas within your design by keeping it simple has a lot of advantage. Another thing for designers is to try to work in a team. Teamwork frames your thinking around design a lot, right? If you're a designer, you spend more time working as a solo designer, you might not grow to the best of your abilities, but when you're paired with a front-end designer, a front-end developer who is coding your design, it gives you insights on how you should design. There's this design trend. I believe you're a designer. There was a design trend called glassmorphism, which, I mean, it's like you having glass type of design, right? It's amazing, but I think that was a fad for about 6 months and everybody moved on, right? But the challenge is that there are so many designs on Dribble that have not been coded. They are not real products, they're just prototypes. And what happens there is that more designers are just designing things that are not practical. When you're designing something that is practical and usable, you realize that you would reduce all the different aesthetics that you can provide and start thinking about the fact that what I have designed here is a desktop screen. However, people use it on a mobile phone. Have I thought about how responsive would work? What will show on mobile devices, what will show on desktops? And then what about iPads are in the middle of desktops and mobile? So you think about that. When you work in a team, it gives you much more understanding about how your design is applied. And I think there's lots of growth from that.
Yeah, so I would actually say that like when it comes to being a designer, there's something called creativity. So like when it comes to a workplace, you'd also have to make sure when you're working as a team that you'd have to have a balance within logic and creativity because at times as designers we'd like to, become very creative, but at the end of the day it might not be feasible for a product, basically.
Yes.
Yep. thank you for sharing those very, very knowledgeable insights on this. So Brenda, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you so much, Tamid. Honestly, I have learned a lot, but I think I'll join Tamid on the question of you are also a techpreneur. So, what successful tips would you give to students who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs, or students who are entrepreneurs already on campus?
I think one of the very first important is cash flow. Understand your cash flow. Try to make sure you're building. I think someone described it as make sure your product or your service is a painkiller, not a vitamin, right? And what they mean by that is make sure you've built something that people would love to pay money for. Because I mean, we all want to take, a painkiller when we have a headache. When you're told take your vitamins, you're like, yeah, I'm good. I'll take it next week, and then you forget, right? But when it's a painkiller, you want a painkiller right now because you have a pressing headache, right? So make sure what you're building as a product solves a pain point for your customers, right? Make sure they see it as a must have and not a nice to have, right? Make sure you spend time building a must have for your consumers. The second thing is, like I said, cash flow, right? Cash flow is you understanding how to manage money within the business. You know, these days, you find that more companies are being bootstrapped and fewer companies are raising funding, right? You need to build a business that you're sure of how you make money from it, right? So you need to get your pricing strategy right. As a freelancer, as an entrepreneur, you need to be sure of how you want to make money, right? And cash flow even goes beyond you making money to how you manage the money being made. You need to be sure of how many people you want to hire, more especially like understand the unit economics of your business. So, for example, if you're building a software company, right, you want to ask yourself, what's the cost of building this in every month? What's our monthly cost? What's our burn rate, right? When you understand that, you're asking yourself, what's the revenue we are getting every month? Because you need to be cash flow positive, right? And if you're even negative on cash flow, you need to ask yourself, at what point do we be cash flow positive? If we spend 6 months building this, how many months before we recoup our investment in this? So those kind of questions are like super, super important. As an entrepreneur too, don't forget to keep a relationship with your customers. Relationship with your customers are so important. If you can get your first 1,000 paying customers and you have a good relationship with them through your brand, that can yield to the next 10,000 paying customers. Because people tell people when they have a good experience with the software, right? So it's important to keep your early customers happy. Every other thing I would say, also have a growth mindset, because there'll be so many other unique challenges that you experience. I don't think this call is enough to capture all the different tips of a startup entrepreneur. There'll be unique challenges you would experience. I'm still experiencing new challenges myself, right? But one thing you understand is if you have a growth mindset, a mindset of the ability to learn from every situation, it would help you to be able to evolve to even a better entrepreneur and then help other people.
This is very good, very insightful. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think one thing that I see was that you had gone to Harvard, you had extended your education, and then that's when you came and started Disha,
Yeah.
right? So how was your experience? First of all, how did you even get there? And then how did you apply what they people from those Harvard, what they tell you, what was something that struck you till today, the advice that they gave you that stuck with you, and you applied it in every um, business venture you opened after
So
that?
the first thing I would say is a clarification, right? I went to the Harvard Extension School for a short course on innovation and strategy, right? I didn't spend, in fact, as at the time, I was not big on master's degrees. I was more like a short education type of system because I learned a lot of things online, right? I believe the University of YouTube is free and anyone can enroll at any time, right? Be you early in the morning or even late at night, you can enroll in the University of YouTube. So you can learn anything at no cost, right? But at that time, I wanted to go to a structured environment where I'm learning from a business leader, who will be teaching on innovation and strategy for growth, right? And I took that course, came down here to the US, took that course in 2018, and it was like within a week, right? I was done with the course, and it was more like a very power packed thing because I think this part about customer centricity was one of the major things I learned in that program because we were tasked with actually building out ideas, with creating new ideas, and they tasked us to go out in the streets of Boston and talk to 100 customers about these ideas we wanted, and we did a survey, and it made me understand like how important, I always thought about how customers are important, but that activity kind of made me understand how customers' importance or them being a stakeholder in you building a product is not just you chatting with a customer, but you actually going out there and interacting with them. You going out there and talking to them. These days when I have customer interviews, I have like full on Zoom sessions with them where I'm asking them to demo the product and I'm looking at what they are clicking because I don't want it to be just over chat or you just getting feedback over a phone call. So it's important to actually talk to these customers because if you can talk to them one on one, you are going to build a better relationship with them compared to if you're just getting their feedback off of a form or a survey.
Oh, okay. That's actually a very good tip. So, any kind of like advice that you got from your mentor that struck with you till today?
One of the advice I've gotten is actually you creating your maker's time, right? And maker's time is the time you set apart for yourself to do deep work, right? A lot of entrepreneurs, we are caught up in this situation where you're pulled by every part of the business, right? The marketing team needs you, the product team needs you, engineering team needs you most of the time. And then you realize that, with all these different people needing you, you might be so busy that you don't craft out the time for you to actually think about the business from a holistic point of view. And so that advice, I got it in 2019 about crafting your own time, like your own time block for you to just think about your business. Another important advice I've gotten is that as an entrepreneur, you're juggling many balls, right? You're juggling multiple things. But while you're juggling those balls, some balls will fall, and when they fall, some of them will bounce, while some of them will break. You need to think about the fact you're juggling multiple things. What are the most critical things I should be doing right now? A lot of people underestimate the importance of scheduling your time and what's the word now? Like setting priorities on what is super important because there's always so many things to do. But you prioritizing what is important to be done today and saying this is also important, but it can be done tomorrow is very, very important as an entrepreneur because there are multiple times you will need to apply that.
Oh, that's really nice. Time management. I think that's something that we also learn in school, assignments and deadlines. I think it's
Yeah.
very, yeah. Okay. So you had shared, Tammy that asked you about challenges. I'd like to ask you what was the hardest moment as an entrepreneur and how did you overcome it?
I think my hardest moment so far has been having to move from my home country to United States to build a new company. That was like a major challenge because I spent the past say 10 years plus of my career building in Nigerian markets. And then because I had to evaluate, my growth, evaluate my country, I realized that yes, it's important to build because you believe in the country. However, it's even more important for you to take care of yourself as an entrepreneur, right? And if you have a better opportunity at a better market, it might be better for you to, move to that market and build from there while you still cater for the market you always had in mind, right? So when I think about that, I realize that me moving to US was strategic for my own growth, for the next phase of my growth, where I can build a truly no-code solution that can be able to impact people from different parts of the world, and not just build something that is only catered to the Nigerian market. So I think that was like the biggest challenge, because having to move countries in your 30s, it's not as convenient as you would think. There's lots of career, not even career, there's lots of cultural shock. There's the fact that the African society is one where your community is very involved, and then the US has its own unique way it works. So moving here has been a little tough, but building new friendships, new relationships is also been rewarding, because you have new relationships that can be able to serve you for the next 20, 30 years of your life. So it was a bigger challenge for me, because every other thing I've experienced as challenge in Nigeria, I kind of realized is part of the growth, But moving here was like I needed to take a step back and evaluate a lot of things. Most of my loved ones were now over the phone, over video calls, and building new relationships here was a little difficult. But I got to work on that, and it's been a lot better than when I moved here.
That's very, I can imagine. I think even for me as an international student, I came in. I'm pretty sure yours is different, but I guess coming in and getting used to the culture, adjusting,
Yeah.
it must be hard, especially for you who has to kind of like navigate through doing business. I
Yes.
think it must be. Yeah, I can't even imagine. So you have touched on the challenges. One of the things I don't know, but you know, every most stories show entrepreneurs as they're already successful. But I'm pretty sure you had some obstacles, right? So you had some rejections. How did you deal with rejections, right?
I'm still dealing with rejections, right? Because it's part of the journey, right? I was telling an entrepreneur friend earlier today. They were sharing with me how tough it has been to raise funding for their new company, and I'm like, yeah, I totally understand that challenge. I'm also facing the challenge as well, and they're like, oh, so how you don't look stressed by it? I was like, because it's just the market, it's not just you. Sometimes when you face challenges, it can be reassuring to understand that the challenge is not just peculiar to you, right? A lot of times we always internalize the challenges we face in business, but I'm learning to realize that they are not personal. Those challenges are not personal. Most of the challenges you're facing in business, if you meet someone who has been in business long enough, they'll tell you, oh, I know of that challenge. I've either experienced it or I know someone who has experienced it. So yeah, I kind of realized that with those challenges, the opportunities within them, right? I think I encourage that entrepreneur today that try to understand that even if you don't raise money right now, the art of raising money is an exchange for the equity in your company. So you also have equity in your company. Keep building, because that way you still have control to build a more remarkable product, and then an investor will be interested at a higher valuation in the next 1 year. So most of these challenges are things that happen, but you need to find a way to frame the perspective of that challenge and see what is the lesson from here, or what is the good news even in this challenge. And I think that's my mindset, and it actually helps me keep going every day.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's very helpful. So you have worked for companies in Nigeria, and how did these companies shape you? Like when it comes to the way you run your companies, like the work culture and everything else. Did they shape you in any way? If so, how?
So I would say, besides just working at companies, by working with clients to have experienced a bit of their work culture in their own companies. And there are two ways they've either shaped me. They've shaped me to apply some of the strategies they've applied in their own company for culture, or they've shaped me to understand what I shouldn't do in my own company, right? I remember, like, I will not name names over this, but I remember working in a company, or interacting with a company where I realized the culture there was very stern when it comes to people making mistakes. And I realized that, I had to read about that, and I realized there has to be a balance when an employee makes a mistake. Because if you make an environment where mistakes are not tolerated at all, then people will be afraid to experiment new ideas. And it can kill that innovative spirit you want in a company. So me seeing that culture of not encouraging experimentation, it made me understand that in my own company, I should encourage experimentation. I should encourage people to, not to make mistakes deliberately, but to explore ideas. I also know about companies where, the whole ideation comes from the top, and I realized that in my own company, I would like an environment where there's a balance, where I allow um, my colleagues or my team members to be able to suggest ideas, and then we can explore those ideas that they suggest or even discuss them critically, because it's important while you want to build a culture where feedback, for example, is appreciated. You need to be a founder or a CEO that also accepts feedback, because they are learning from you. People are seeing how you work, your style of work, and they are inspired by you to work at your company. So it's all there are lots of lessons to learn really from looking at other companies. I think also, besides you going to work at these companies for you to gain insights on how they behave, you can actually read about different companies. Like I said, I'm big on books, I'm big on YouTube videos, I'm big on like simple, tidbits of information, podcasts you can actually listen to, and you can get insights on company culture or company strategies for their own growth. And you don't need to work there. You can actually listen to these things and apply into your own business ideas.
Oh, that's great. That's really helpful. That's really great. Okay, so is there you talked about how you also learned from the client organizations that you work for, right? COVID is over, but we'd like actually to know, or at least give us the lessons that you learned when it comes to managing people, especially during such a dire time during COVID.
COVID was a very difficult time, very, very difficult time. But one thing I learned from that period was communication is key. A lot of times we are in situations where we feel like we shouldn't we should shield our people from the realities of the business. I was doing that before COVID, but COVID made me understand it's important to let them know that this is the reality of the business. We are not making lots of money. Economy has been really messy. It's really a tough time, right? Letting them understand is a better way compared to you trying to shield them from it, because you didn't start COVID yourself, and it was tough because we are all working from home. Everyone was remote by force. It's not like there was an option to be in office. Everyone was remote. So it was a really difficult time, and I thought about communicating with them, explain to them the realities, how I felt, how the business was faring. And I think it actually helped me at that time. Also, another thing I learned during that period was to trust people more, because if you're building a company while everyone is remote, it's important to trust your people, because you're not seeing them, in contrast of you working with them in the office where you can see what they are doing, you can only trust the work they are putting in. So try to make their work much more itemized so that they can be able to, it's better tracking for their work. That way you can be able to make reasonable changes, or I mean, say if you're looking to let go of some people because of the economic situation, you can make informed decisions because you can see who is putting in the most work at different times in the company. So COVID was a very difficult time, really, and I think it's also bettered something in me that I am able to run a better software company all the way from the US and have people all the way in Nigeria working on that company. So it's had its own challenge, but it had its own lessons, really.
Okay, that's really nice. So you were interviewed by Y Combinator, and for the audience, Y Combinator is like the startup accelerator. How was that like? And you also were given recognition by Forbes, 30 under 30, and Future Awards. How is that like, and how do you deal with the recognition? How do you use it to your advantage? How do you remain humble?
So yeah, the interview for Y Combinator was for a previous company, Disha, the one I exited. It was an interview to consider taking us into their program, which didn't actually pull through because it was in 2020 we had that interview, and I think one of the feedback they gave us was that they were focusing on health-related startups because it was COVID. COVID had just started, and that was in March of 2020 when that interview happened. So that was that interview. However, with the Future Awards Africa, I think that award in 2016, it was one of the biggest awards I had gotten in 2016 because I had launched the agency full time in 2015. And it was just 1 year in business, and then we were recognizing me for something huge in creativity because I had done work for like 5 years before launching that company. And I didn't expect that award really. I dressed up for it, and I showed up to build a network at the event, only for me to win the award, and it was I remember it was a very, very huge achievement for me at the time. It was something I can even remember like how I felt. I was super excited. It was a very strong validation of my work at the time. That was good. You know, there's been lots of followers since then, lots of further people talking about my work from that time because it put my work in like the limelight. Fast forward to 2019 when I was on Forbes, that was like way, way higher, because, from looking at the work we had done and then the consistent work up until getting to 2019 and then Forbes recognizes my work, it's been amazing. I flew to South Africa. It was a whole experience. It was beautiful, right? And it's also helped us to grow the business because when you're working in a fast company where the CEO is being recognized in the media a lot for his creativity, it made more clients trust that they are in the right hands. It made them trust that we knew what we are doing. It's those validations actually helped us to win new business. On the other hand, it's also made us known by many other younger creative people. So it's been a lot of positive effects since those recognitions, and I'm someone that I feel like even when it's coming, don't lose your values. If you're someone who sees the importance of humility, professionalism, being helpful to others, don't lose yourself while you get recognized for your work. People would want to learn from you many years to come. Try to still maintain at your core who you are.
That's really great. That's really nice advice. Okay, so I see that you have this thing where you started you got acquired by Flutterwave, but you still kept on going. You made Credital, and then now you are on VZY, right? So you don't stop. I don't know how you keep yourself going, but would like to know. And you can touch a bit on VZY, how you apply no code solutions and AI to make people just use or create websites on the go.
So the first thing is that the company name is called Busy, not VZY. It's spelled VZY. It's called Busy. The
Thank
word
you for correcting me.
Yeah, it's all right. The word busy is coined from very easy. Before the acquisition of Flutterwave, I realized I wanted to build a bigger company. I wanted to build something much more grand. And I was exploring like the whole creative side. At the time we built Disha, it was more like a link tree alternative, right? However, building Disha was more like building Visi rather was something that was much more profound. Like I want to build a full-on website builder that would have all the bells and whistles of what can compete with potentially Squarespace or Wix in the market, right? We are building that already, and applying AI today to it is we started by building a minimum viable product. Really was a simple product that you can launch a full website right from your phone. The reason why we thought about mobile first design was the fact that all the data we or I researched before starting this shows that majority of visitors on a website come from mobile phones. People use mobile phones to create a lot in today's market, right? From people on TikTok to people on Instagram, they're all creating from their mobile phones. A few of them create on, full-on devices like desktops and then export to mobile phones. But there are more mobile creators out there in the market, and I felt that our tool can be one that they can be able to create on their phones, and that way we can democratize opportunity because more people have phones and fewer people have computer access to computers, right? And if you can empower people with being able to create on their phone, then you're doing something remarkable. So we started with allowing people to create full-on websites right on their phone and manage from their phones. And then we moved on to integrating AI, which we will be releasing that update in another 2-3 weeks, where people can be able to just describe their brand or describe a brand. And then all the points of the website from icons to images to content is all generated for them. And they can just hit the publish button. So that way you're pretty much enabling people to build their ideas in a faster timeline compared to them having to spend time doing extensive research and all of that. You're just trying to because AI is super intelligent, right? Today, our platform is engineered such that if you enter a business name and then what industry that business is in, the AI would actually do that research to say, here's the kind of services this business should be offering. Here's the best way to describe that business so that you get more search engine results. And then it generates all that content for you and displays on your website. And then you can just edit and publish. So it shortens the time, almost like you're building a website and then you start at 0%, move to 98%, and finish 2%. So it covers all the time in a very, very short period, So yeah, keep going. I know that it's tough to keep going actually because there's more challenges as you keep building new businesses. But I find that I think I enjoy the process, I built a company. I think my last company was like 7 years of running digital agency and building this. I think I'll be doing this for the next, say, 5 years. And I enjoy the impact of the work of these companies because, I know the kind of stories that were told out of digital. I know the kind of stories of impact that will be told out of Visi. Because I think about how, people will use this tool in places I don't even know who they are or where they are, and they will build websites in a remarkable timing, and they will build for their clients, and then it will help them make more revenue, since they are building in shorter timeline. So it really is about the impact.
That's great. That's really nice. That's really great. Okay, so is there anything that you would have done differently from since you started till now?
Since I started, I think I would have spent time building a product from the get-go, instead of building an agency. Because I realized that if I had spent more time in research and built a product, I would maybe be retired by now because building a product, say 10 years ago, your product will most likely be a thought leader today. Building a product in this market right now, you'll most likely have more competing products in that space. So timing is actually super, super important in building an idea. Anyone building an idea in AI right now, the person is building at the early time of AI, right? But someone building an AI product 5 years from now might be building a product when they're already like 200 or 300 products building with AI. You understand? So it's important to also position your product at the right timing, But also, you can't also neglect the fact that whatever you're building now, the experience accumulates, right? So in as much as I say, maybe I would have loved to go back in time and build a product, I still find that if you went back in time, you remove the wisdom you've learned over those times. So it's all positive eventually.
Oh, okay. So before I open the floor for Q&A from the audience, I have two more questions. The first one is, what is your mental model, or how do you go about decision making as a CEO? We don't see a lot of design leaders, a lot of designers in leadership position, even in the Fortune 500 company. So how do you go about decision making as a designer?
So the first thing I would like to say is I always try to evaluate all the options, right? Decision making as a CEO is a very tough one because every decision you make can like make or break things in a very, very short time, right? So I always try to explore all the different alternatives, try to see what are the different ways I can solve this problem, right? Once you have that, you need to now check which of these is the one you can be able to act on ASAP, right? Which of these options do you have need for someone to give you insights? All of these things kind of matter before you make a decision, especially when you're not knowledgeable about the decision you're about to make. So it's important to know decisions and prioritize what needs to be done now, what can be done later, and the different ways to solve a particular problem. Because sometimes you have a very simple problem or a very simple task, and you're thinking of the most complicated way to solve that problem when you should be thinking about the easiest path to it. And that thing again is about delegation. I try as much as possible that I'm doing the things that I'm very like fortified to do, right? The things that are not my own primary responsibility, I try to delegate. Whatever someone else can do, you delegate because the real currency in life is your time, and it's important that we value our time as founders of companies where we can be able to decide better, plan better, act faster, and see the results sooner and know how to pivot if you've made a wrong decision.
Okay, that's really good. Thank you so much for your insights. Now, my last question is, what are your strengths and weaknesses as a leader, as a CEO, and where do you see yourself in the future?
I think one of my strengths is I'm very detailed. And this is even apart from the fact that I'm really good at design. I'm very detailed in my work. I spend a lot of time researching, right? And my research is very thorough to make sure that, on that particular product, I spend the most time studying the best way to solve that problem. And I think all of these things form like strengths for me. However, my weaknesses will be around the fact that I can be too detailed that it's taking too long to solve a particular problem. And I find that this is something that I think I struggle with. And what I've done to mitigate that is things like setting timelines to say, you need to decide on this in 1 hour, right? So it helps me compress all my research to say, remember this needs to be solved now. Remember, you can always improve on this. What is the quickest solution and a solution you can improve upon over time, right? So when it comes to like deciding on things as a startup, you kind of want to decide faster so that you can, move fast and then improve on that decision you've made. Because a lot of things with startups is mostly timing, and timing is really short, right? If you can launch in market and then improve the product, it's better off than building forever and then launching late.
Hmm. Okay, that's really nice. So where do you see yourself in the future? I saw recently that you were voted by your classmates as more likely to have a unicorn. So where do you see Visi in the future?
Be
And
honest, I believe that VZ will be really successful. I believe that it will create opportunities for people everywhere in the world, from the US here to the African market. I believe that the product will be hosting, give or take, over 1 million websites in a short time. I believe that the product could be worth a unicorn, like worth $1 billion, right? I also believe in the realities of the market and that some of all these things that we have not all of them might come true, right? And we have to understand that the realities of life is you knowing how you want to measure your own success and what success truly means to you, right? For me, success means a successful company nonetheless. However, it doesn't take up the fact that, I would like to have a happy family. I would like to have loved ones around me because I believe that that is actually a true measure of life for me, right? Success for me is not just how much is in the bank. So when people ask
Mm.
questions like see myself next 5 years, in as much as I want to see success in the business, I want to tell them I want to see myself married with a happy kid and living a happy life. Because those things, I believe, are the metrics that will matter to me in the next 5 years compared to just the success of the company.
Oh, okay, that's really nice. That's really nice, honestly. I'm so glad that you are here. So now we're opening the floor for Q&A session. So if the audience has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box, and Mr. Evans will answer. Um, okay. So the first question is how to attract more customers to be interested in your product.
Um, there's a concept called building in public. And that concept is around sharing the ideas of your product even before you launch, right? And it's important that I think people should experiment with that, where while you're trying to build your product, you're sharing ideas around your product, you're tweeting about your product, you're sharing, say, videos around like early prototypes of your product. By doing that, you're creating the audience for your product, right? In fact, if possible, you can start to grow the audience for your product before you actually start to build the product. I think by building an audience, you will get lots of insights, about what you're about to build before you build it. And the reward for building that audience is the fact that when your product gets to launch, you already have the customers already waiting for that product. So one of the effective strategies of building attracting the customers for your product is bringing them in very early on the process. Invite them to product demos, invite them to one-on-one sessions where you want to learn from them and see how your products can help them before you even launch that product.
Hmm. Oh, okay. That's really helpful. That's really insightful. Um, what about, okay, so we'll be waiting to receive more questions, but so far, honestly, the session has been very insightful.
Thank you.
And yeah, and I look forward to seeing more from you. We will have Mr. Ivan Sakano on Future Lab. Mr. Ivan Sakano is big on he said resources, YouTube, and learning, but he's also big on mentorship. So if you want to have a one-on-one session with Mr. Akano, you can you will find him on the Future Lab platform. So honestly, is there anything that Tamin you'd like to add from your side?
Well, since I actually would want to ask a question, this is like from a designer's perspective, that how would you tell the people, like the designers, to handle constructive criticism? Because in many cases, there are cases where they're like happy with their designs, but at the end of the day, someone might not be happy about it, or it shouldn't be like that. So how should they take in the constructive criticism in the first place?
I think criticism is great, but I also empathize with designers that sometimes the criticism is not coming from a constructive point of view, right? Most people um, they critique your work without having a full view about what the effort you put in or how you constructed that one, right? But one thing that helps is bringing people in as stakeholders, right? whoever is supposed to give you criticism on your work, it's great to have them involved even in the beginning of the process. If you have them involved early on, then you can be able to get, their own input. And also, one other thing that helps is how do you also explain your work? How do you show case studies on how you made that work? If you're sending a design result out to a stakeholder, you just send only the result or design or the prototype without giving context. If you give context and say, here's a prototype for this app we've created. Here is why we did this. Here's why we did this. Here's why we use this color here. Here's why the button is down here. If you give all those context, it kind of shows, how you thought about what you've done. And most times when you've given that kind of context, it reduces the kind of backlash on criticism you get, right? And then any criticism you're getting is actually something that is valuable to improve the results. Also, on the other hand, I think designers should be much more open to taking such criticism and giving such feedback. And I think as you grow as a designer, you become much more open to receiving such feedback, right? The more you open up yourself to feedback, it actually helps you grow. Most of the feedback you get from customers or clients or supervisors at your projects are actually constructive. And even if they are spoken in a very harsh way that can affect you, you think about what they are saying, take them off, take off the pain from the feedback and just try to see that feedback and see how can I apply this feedback in what I'm doing right now, right? Take it in and see how you can improve. It always gets better.
Right. So, if you have any more questions from the audience, please you can drop them in comments. We're going to address them. And one more thing that I wanted to know was like, so being like, let's say, working with a front end developer as a UI UX designer, do you think it's also important for them to like, so let's say they have some kind of specific library that they're using for components and everything? Is it important for the designers to actually go through that? Like, what do you, like, because I see most of the time designers are coming with ideas from scratch, but when they already know that, like, okay, there's some kind of libraries that the entire team is already using, and they should be probably following that. So what's your take on that?
I believe designers should follow existing libraries. It helps because you don't want to hire a new person who's going to change all the systems that is already in place, right? Most times we worry about aesthetics, but for a fully functional system, you want to find ways to improve the system and not to throw it all away and start a new system, right? Because throwing it all away is months of work that you can't erase and start all over again. So it's important that if there are existing libraries that the front end developers are comfortable with, the designer should try to look at them and see how can I improve, this framework. What are the very tiny things I can add here that can improve the overall feature of this framework?
Mm. Okay, so we have some students who had questions. I'm gonna share with them with you right now. So the first question is basically, do you have any digital marketing strategies when you are building your product? Any digital marketing strategies that you'd like to share out you about that?
Digital marketing strategies, I think creating content is super important. But not just creating content, but creating helpful content. When you create helpful content, it's a lot easier for people to trust your brand, trust you for what you do, and even build that brand love for your company. So it's important to share helpful content, share as much as you can, create helpful tips that can help people to also do what they are trying to achieve. What else? Be where your customers are. If your customers spend time on TikTok, be on TikTok with them. If they spend more time on Instagram, spend time there with them on Instagram. Try to be where your customers are at so that you reduce the friction in them communicating with you. There is so many more digital strategies that you can Google online, try out multiple different things, and focus on like two when you start your company. Drive those two really hard. Use those two to grow other platforms.
All right. So I see that we have one more question. It's about which would be the tips and strategies for thriving in a creative tech career?
I think to survive in creative industry, you need to stand out, right? One of the tips of you standing out is you spending time researching, spending time writing case studies on how you think about design work you're creating. Help people to see you not just as someone who is creating aesthetically pleasing products, but creating things where you've thought deeply about how you are making them, right? If you share more case studies, share more articles, be that designer who is not just designing but writing articles about what you've designed. It helps you a lot compared to you just creating pixel perfect designs.
So there's one more thing that I would like to ask is about what are the UI and UX product management trends and the job opportunities out there and how to get started ahead in this field and what can be prepared during the degree studies or what is the advice for further studies in this field?
I think one of the biggest trends today is AI, right? AI is one of the biggest trends today. And that trend has been steady over the past few years has been mobile, right? More people are thinking mobile, more phone users have in fact, the mobile usage has trumped desktop usage all over the world, right? So when you think about that, start to think about how your designs apply for mobile devices, how you can simplify complex tools to mobile friendly options. And for job opportunities in this field, I think that there is much more newer ways to study beyond like full-on universities where you can take degrees in product management. There are courses on Coursera. There is courses in Google Skill Up platforms. There are courses in Udemy or Masterclass where you can take on, you know, actually work with someone who's an expert in the field and learn from them. It's also the importance of self-teaching, where you create projects for yourself and you tell yourself, I want to design, for example, a new bank platform, and I'm going to study current bank platforms and ask myself, what are those bank platforms not doing right? Right. And then use those knowledge to actually build out a really good platform. So there are multiple different ways to learn. What's important is that you apply yourself on those different methods and craft something good for yourself. Build a profile in the right places, from LinkedIn to Twitter to I think mostly LinkedIn and Twitter. Most of the job opportunities come from there. And then there are other platforms where you can actually share yourself when you see that there are people that can potentially hire you in those areas. But if you're that designer who shares thought pieces on LinkedIn, it's a lot easier for you to get an opportunity.
All right, I see that there are a few more questions over here that we got. So Avin575 is asking that any advice for students in general, like focusing on studies, learning, refining skills, or trying new things?
I think a student should spend more time balancing work and school. It's a very important skill. Work can be used studying a new or refining your skill. Consider it like a whole facet to what you're doing, right? However, try not to slack off in school because you're trying to learn a new skill. It's important to get an education, right? There are lots of opportunities ahead by you getting a very good degree, right? And even you graduating with a good grade when you're done from school. But it's important for you to learn how to manage your time. Maybe spend some time weekend just reading a book on a particular area. Give yourself like 2 months to create something, your weekends that shows off your skill. Try different things really, because a lot of times people underestimate the importance of trying out different things before they can decide on what area they really want to specialize on. Say, for example, someone who wants to get into tech might want to either be a product developer or a designer or a project manager. And it's important that while you're in school, you can be able to explore these different areas and tell yourself what part you want to master and then apply much more time, even after school, on that area.
I see. So we have another question from one of the audience. So it's from Miss Elish. As someone currently studying in the STEM field, I'd like to know whether the change in the field was worth it. Would you do it again?
Um, yes, to be honest, I was studying chemistry, industrial chemistry, and looking at how software is controlling everything in the world today, I think if I was to go back, maybe I would have loved to spend my degree in computer science or software engineering, right? That way I'll be having a head start, in the world of tech today, you know. However, I love to talk about career pivots and, study or these kind of pivots because I find that not everyone is studying what they are interested in doing. And I would like to be the voice of those people to tell them, listen, I did it and it's not hard. If you have that thing in you telling you want to be a backend developer, explore that option. In your 20s is the best time for you to spend time checking out different areas of expertise and deciding what you love to do the most. And it's great because today, no matter how much challenges I face in running business, the fact that I design, I actually enjoy doing it. And it helps, if you're to choose between a career and doing something in your career that you love to do, I think you should pick something that you actually have genuine interest in doing.
Right. So we have another one, a question, which is from Jolie Cool. Hello, I would like to know your thoughts on product designing as a career path. How is it and how do we start on this career path?
Product designing is a great career path. There are so many people building software today. So it's actually a great career path. You can be able to build out amazing products in different industries. I think it's great because you can be able to use your knowledge on one thing, which is design, and apply to industries that you would have spent more time doing. One of the people that is remarkable in my team is a software engineer and he's also studying medicine in the university. And he tells me how he actually enjoys, applying his knowledge of coding and still taking his medical classes. So you find that tech creates an opportunity for everyone, really. If you're interested in product design, start off by going on YouTube, researching how to, you know, understand UI design, UX design. I think I have two videos on YouTube on UI and UX design, and I kind of broke it down in a very simple way. And I'm always available. You can reach out via email or, through the organizers here, Brenda or, Tamid, and ask them how to reach me. It's actually easy for you to start out as a product designer.
Okay. So I remember, I mean, you are also a product manager. Can you give us any kind of like career advice or when you want to venture into that route?
Product management is, I won't say it's very easy, but I think it's important that product managers are people who are advocates for the customers and the advocates for the team. Project managers sit, their work is unique because they are in the midst of working with what customers are saying about the product, and understanding how to relay the business goals to the product team who is actually building the product. They need to have more empathy for the customers and empathy for the people in the team who are building the product, designers and developers alike. They need to understand how to manage people because you're working with designers, you're working with developers, and you're also working with the executives at the company. If the executives say we want to have a new feature, maybe like an affiliate platform feature in our app, you need to understand how to do your research as a project manager to understand the details of that and then create a requirements document for the team. You need to be able to host meetings and explain to them in the simplest way, designer, here is what you need to do, developer, here's what you need to do. Here's the timeline for this, here's the milestones we need to complete. All of that is the role of a project manager. And it's important that someone who is good at organizational skills starts to explore how to apply all of that to project management.
Okay, that's great. We have come to the end of our session. Thank you so much, Mr. Akanno, for all the insights that you shared. You have been really helpful. And I hope that the students can actually engage with you on the Future Lab platform. So if you're looking for more beneficial initiatives like to grow your skills sets and network, we encourage you to get involved with Future Labs mission and get exposed to more amazing opportunities like this. Also, Future Lab has free mentor classes that you can join. This is for my audience, and so we will give out a QR code at the end of the live stream so you can scan. And also for Mr. Akanno, we will have a career webinar feedback form. So you can always tell what you really liked from the speaker, right? And that is all. Thank you so much, Mr. Evans. Thank you so much, Tamid.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Evans, especially.
Great, Tamid. Great time.
Okay, and that is it.